This is the Genesee County Compassion Club show. I'm your host, Jeremy, back here at allpointstv.com, making it happen today, man. It is March something. February was like
March
gone.
7th. It's March 7th.
See? I was close.
It's flying by.
It is flying by. I mean, March 7th. My goodness. We got St. Patrick's Day coming up here very soon. First day of spring coming up here very soon. And I know most of you probably are wishing for spring today as we get more snow in the Flint areas. But, you know, it is what it is. It is still winter. So, we're going to get this show kicking. We got lots of stuff to talk about today. We want to talk about medical marijuana. That's what it's all about. Going to talk to you about the Genesee County Compassion Club, let you know what's happening there, and get you guys up to date what's been going on in the news with weed. All right, so let's get it off. Let's get it on. First thing I want to mention down at the club, of course, is our soup kitchen. It went good this last time, and we need your help again here at the end of March. So just mark your calendars if you would. It's the last Friday of the month. We're trying to get it switched up so that more of you guys down at the club can have time to participate. We understand that Friday afternoon is not the best time to leave the club if you're a caregiver, but we're seeing what we can do about that. We got to, you know, work with the soup kitchen down there and their scheduling as well, but we're trying to see if maybe we can get like a lunch time shift or maybe a different day. But if we do switch it up, we'll of course let you guys know. Right now we're still on track for Friday evenings like we've been doing last Friday of the month. And if you could join us in March, we'd really appreciate it.
They serve like meals every day, don't they? There at
Soup Kitchen serves lunch and dinner, and I don't know if they do breakfast or not, but I mean, I know you can get 2 meals a day there every day, which that's pretty awesome.
I don't think there's a place.
And there's I believe four different soup kitchens in Greater Flint.
I know there's
area.
one on the south side somewhere. I think off of Fenton Road, if I'm not mistaken. Then you got the one up here in Stewart, which you're part of. You know,
Yep.
And then but I mean, I get really, I kind of chafe when people say about we don't help the poor and this. The people there, where everybody else is trying out there.
Absolutely.
You can't criticize that.
And I got to give props to Rick Thompson. He's another medical marijuana activist, and he's been doing a soup kitchen right up here on the corner, I think on Saturdays, literally just a few blocks down from where we're shooting the podcast at. And that's just him doing that with some other good people out of the goodness of their heart. It's not an organization or anything like that. It's just people coming together, helping out, like John said. So all of that is good stuff. And I know there's a lot of people talking about the Flint movie that came out on Netflix. I haven't watched it yet, but
I actually watched the first episode.
Did you?
It's pretty good, actually. Somebody tried to tell me most of it was shot in Canada. I went, no, I know this. I know
I know
Flint
the streets
scenes.
that they're on, yeah.
Yeah, so I know. I'm pretty sure it's in Flint, but the movie they shot in Flint was the one about the water crisis.
Yeah,
that was shot. The city hall. The city hall scenes are not shot at our city hall.
Yeah.
They're shot at someplace else. But this one seems. I got to watch the second one pretty soon. But because I don't like watching because I produce stuff. So I don't like sitting down more.
Right.
I produce stuff every day. So, but it's actually pretty fair and balanced. I would say. I think it's one of the more fair and balanced things I've seen with that first episode.
Right on. One of the things, I mean, like I said, I have not watched it personally, but I know one of the things that some people have already mentioned to me is the. They're not really highlighting some of the resilience that you see in this city, and there certainly is a strong resilience. There's a lot of people here that they could have left a long time ago, and in fact a lot of people did, but these folks didn't. They dug in. This is their home and they're proud of it. So that goes a long ways, and that's why you see groups like us, other groups out there in the community stepping up, helping out, and giving even when it hurts, because we love this place. We want to improve it in spite of what it is, and we do see the light at the end of the tunnel, even though it might be a candlelight. It doesn't matter. We're still going for it. This is our home, so we're going to do the best we can to take care of it, and that's you guys at the club. You do the same thing. So but anyways, let's get on here. We need another way to keep the place clean is our Adopt a Highway that is coming up here. Let me get you some dates on that. It is April. It's coming up quicker than you know. It's going to be the week before our 420 party. The date is April 14th. It is a Saturday. We'll be out on M13 like we have been for the last 8 or 9 years doing our cleanup. So if you could join us on that Saturday, we'd really appreciate it. You can meet us out on M13 if that's closer to where you are. At about 10 a.m. we'll be there, and we'll be on I think the crossroads are Potter and Beecher on M13. So if you're at one of those cross streets, you're going to see us out there in our yellow vest. Give us a wave or stop by and participate. And then when you get done, we'll come back to the club and we'll feed you real good as a part of the deal. So first cleanup of the year. We definitely need lots of hands out there. The more the merrier and the easier it gets. it's a nice. Usually, it's a nice 1 mile walk is what it boils down to. So,
what is the most interesting thing you ran across in there to clean up? Because I walk around the roads and stuff. Especially after big snow and then plowed out, and then the snow melts. My friend and I walk around. Friends and I walk around. You find all kinds of stuff laying around. Like we found you name it.
Well, being that we are a cannabis club, we're always got a keen eye for the cannabis-related items. The last cleanup that we did of the last year, we actually found someone's little stash jar, if you will. It was a little pill container, and when I found it, when I popped it open, inside was some weed in a baggie and a pre-roll. So somebody got scared, obviously, and threw it out their car window going down the road. But we kept it out of the hands of children and cleaned it up. We took care of that.
my friend a couple of years ago found a grinder.
Oh yeah,
and this was the city streets, but he found pushed it. He was during the plow after the plowing. He found a grinder and he also found a mini scale. He probably
paraphernalia out the window. There it goes. Yep. So, but yeah, no, we could use your help. Adopt a Highway. If you could come out, definitely would appreciate it. All right, it's April 14th. It's a Saturday. It is the Saturday before our 420 party. So I'll bring that up next. That's our. I left the posters in the car. Frog lips. I will. Yeah, my keys and my coat. They're sitting on top of my car seat in the back. And my coat pocket, it's in the vest right here. Yeah. Yeah, we got some killer posters. I got to share them with you guys. You guys down at the club, Brian, and I know some other folks were involved in making the design for our 420 party this year, and I got to show it to you. I'm excited. I think they're really cool. We got our 420 party going on, and it is Friday. It's going to be all day long. Tickets are $20, and there's going to be lots of stuff. I'll get the poster. I'll show you what I'm talking about. But this is our 10th year. 10th year. So a decade of 420 parties at the G3C. I don't think anybody else can say that here in Michigan, that they've had 10 years straight now. And, maybe obviously you could count, Ann Arbor down there with the, I can't even think of it, Hash Bash. It's been going for 40 plus years. But as far as the 420 party, G3C's, that's it, man. We were the beginning, and we're still here kicking it. So 10 years of this, and this is going to be the best one yet, without a doubt. So you want to make sure you mark your calendars for that Friday. It's going to be an all-day event. We've got things planned out throughout the day, so no matter when you get there, there's going to be something there for you, something to do, something to have fun with. It's going to be some good stuff. I'll let John get the posters here. Hopefully he doesn't trip and fall or anything. It's slippery out there. I can hear him now. He's coming. He's coming. Yeah, we got these really cool, I don't have them with me today either, but we got these really cool dog tags that are going to emulate, they're the same thing as the poster I'm about to show you. But that's your ticket to get in. We've had the bracelets in the past. This year it's going to be dog tags. You didn't happen to grab the other one, did you?
No, I didn't. Just grab one.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All right. Would you mind grabbing the other one? The other one's a really cool one.
Okay. They're in the pile?
It should have been right there.
Yeah, same pile though, right?
Yeah,
I'll just bring the whole thing.
Okay. All right. Well, this is the events right here. So I'll go through them with you. We've got our first ever G3C Tasters Cup. This is going to kind of replace our testing cup, but this is for flowers, concentrates, and edibles. And you can enter in the contest. You got to enter in ahead of time. It says right here, all entries in by 5 p.m. April 13th. So they've got to be in by that date so that our testers have time to take them home and to really test it out thoroughly, without having time constraints and to be able to focus on what it is they're doing. So it does take time to do that. So we're going to do that. It is a Tasters Cup. You can enter. It's $20 fee for entry, and then of course we'll have prizes for first and second, third prizes for each one of those categories. So flowers, concentrates, and edibles. All right. Here you go, and it says right on the poster, all samples will be given to a panel of 5 judges, judged on smell, taste, appearance, and effects. So there you go. Trophies awarded first, second, and third in all categories: bud, concentrate, and medibles. All right, so there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Okay. All right, sample requirements for that bud: you need basically a quarter, 7.5 grams. Separated into 5 1.5 gram packs. So one for each judge, 1.5 grams. All right. Concentrates, you need to have 2.5 grams. separated into 5 half-gram packs. Again, 1 for each judge. And for edibles, you need to have 5 with 1, packaged individually. 5 individually packaged ones for one for each judge. So that's for the Taster's Cup. All right, you guys definitely want to check that out. It's going to be a lot of fun. And in the past, we've used testing to decipher number 1, number 2. Obviously the effect is something that we're primarily concerned with, without a doubt. But what we are finding is that the effects are not solely related to the cannabinoid content. So we may have had certain strains that tested higher in the past, but they weren't necessarily the preferred strain, because there's other factors in there in determining that, such as like the terpenes, bag appeal, taste, so on and so forth. This Taster's Cup will in fact be examining all of those things, with the exception of the testing, of course. So at any rate, I think this is going to be a great contest, and I'm anxious to see who our winners are going to be. All right, so this is the poster for the 420. Now you can see why I wanted to show it to you, because this thing is awesome. These are what our t-shirts are going to look like. This is what the cups are going to have. Other swag items like lighters and stuff are going to be there at the party. And then, like I said, when you get your tickets, you're not going to actually get a ticket. You're going to get dog tags with this little thing right on there for you. So you can see it's our 10th annual 420 party. And like I said, it's all day. It's going to be awesome. We got Aaron Park. He's a famous glass blower and slowly getting more famous by the day. He will be there blowing custom glass pieces, and we'll also have his artwork there available for sale. We're going to have door prizes. We're going to have a ping pong tournament. We have our 420 auction. Of course, we've got the testing cup. B-Dogs will be there again. Everybody loves B-Dogs and all his famous hot dogs. He will be there again for us. We're going to have a dessert table, twist off, and live music with the band Happy Time. So it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of things going on. And like I said, it's going on all day long. So if you're one of those folks that, we got to come in early or not at all, come on in. It's going to be a blast. Or if you're there to be there at 420, that's going to obviously be a great time as well. So we encourage you to come on out. Tickets are $20. You can get them at the club. And hope to see you guys there. All right? All right, let's talk about some news. Okay, we got some items here I want to talk about. And first thing I want to share with you is we are coming up on campaign season, of course. So we're going to have a bombardment of campaign items coming at us real soon. Obviously, we're going to be voting on important things like who our governor is going to be. We're going to be voting on cannabis, whether or not we should legalize it for adult recreational use. That's going to be coming to us to a vote in November. Another important category, and I think most of you now understand the importance of this category, and that is our Attorney General. Most of you are well aware of the issues that have been really placed on us because of our current Attorney General in the past 8 years. We've dealt with the same person since the inception of marijuana, unfortunately, and that person was also the main opponent against medical marijuana prior to its being passed. So to have that person now be the in charge of the law of the land, it really, I think, was an incredibly detrimental thing to our laws that we passed here in Michigan for medical marijuana. The implementation of those, the interpretation, and so on and so forth, all incredibly damaging for many, many people here in the state, being treated as criminals when in fact this law was passed to protect them and to be used to allow them to be treated as patients, which in fact they are. So the Attorney General is an incredibly important position, and it's going to be no less important in the future. So our current Attorney General, Bill Schuette, who is now going to be running for governor, he obviously will be exiting the post. He served his 8 years in that position and now is looking to move up the political ladder, if you will. The replacements that we're going to be considering on the Republican side, we have Mr. Tom Leonard, who is also a former legislator, Republican, and from the DeWitt, Michigan area. The other side of the coin is going to be a Democratic nominee, Dana Nessel. Dana, strong female from the Wayne County area. I believe she was a Wayne County assistant prosecutor and also a civil defense attorney. Dana is a strong proponent for medical marijuana, for people's rights, and would be an excellent person in this position. So I would encourage you to get educated about your Attorney General choices in this coming election, and I would encourage you to consider Ms. Dana Nessel for the position. It is likely she will be on your ballot. She is the main Democratic candidate. I don't know if she's accepted the nomination or whatever, getting on all that mumbo jumbo, but she's running, and she just recently received a, let me pull this up here for you, endorsement from the Michigan Educational Association, MEA. They are giving her support, also the support of their 140,000 member labor union. Yes, actually right here in the article that I'm reading, it says that this is 5 weeks currently before the Democratic Party's endorsement convention. So Ms. Nessel has not yet been endorsed as the primary Democratic candidate for this position, but I'm sure she will be, especially with endorsements like we're seeing here from the MEA. Like I stated, she's a former assistant Wayne County prosecutor, civil rights attorney, and scored the endorsement over the former U.S. Attorney Patrick Miles, whose mother was a MEA member. So definitely strong support here for Ms. Nessel, in spite of the family connection or whatever. Let's see here. It says Nessel was deemed to be the strongest candidate for public education, according to the MEA, and the MEA also endorsed Jocelyn Benson for Secretary of State. Benson is running unopposed for the party's nomination to the post. I don't know much about the Secretary of State position, and I'm not going to get into that. But I will get into the Attorney General position. It is incredibly important. It will make an impact on medical marijuana patients and caregivers in the future. And so this is something we definitely want to be concerned with and watching closely. So again, please check out Dana Nessel, if you will, as a potential candidate for our state's Attorney General position. And again, it's going to be for the next 4 years, whoever gets the vote. So, all right, that's the story with the Attorney General. We'll probably be talking about gubernatorial candidates later on in the year. We can get around to that. I'm not there yet. There'll be plenty of time for campaign malarkey in the future, I'm sure. All right, next thing I want to move on to is the Medical Marijuana Licensing Act. It has turned into a nightmare for some particular cities. And the first one I want to cover and talk about today is Lansing. Lansing has been, we've talked about this on the podcast, but I want to get into it a little bit more. Let me pull up this story here. Let Lansing Vote is a group that was formed and a group that gathered signatures to, in a sense, let Lansing vote on their medical marijuana ordinances. They gathered signatures. The city clerk said he didn't have enough and threw out a bunch of signatures that Let Lansing Vote group says are valid. So we have an argument over how many signatures were collected. Let Lansing Vote sued the city of Lansing and their clerk over it, and now we're in court, and this is the result. So this is from the Lansing State Journal, and I want to bring this article to your attention. The group sued the city in November 2017, alleging that the city clerk, Chris Swope, had improperly invalidated a petition containing signatures needed to suspend the marijuana ordinance that would give city council a choice to repeal the ordinance, or failing that, put the matter before voters. So in the November 1 news release, the city clerk's office said Let Lansing Vote petition was 26 signatures short of the number necessary to represent the required 5% of the city's registered voters. Swope said last month that the release contained a math error and should have stated that the petition was 46 signatures short. Regardless, Let Lansing Vote alleges the clerk improperly threw out 300 signatures, which would have been more than enough to meet the required amount for a valid petition. In its defense against the lawsuit, the city did not focus on the validity of the rejected signatures. Rather, the city attorney, Jim Smirtka, argued that the Lansing City Charter, the clerk has discretion to determine whether signatures are admissible. In his order, JMO questioned the strength of the city's argument regarding the clerk's discretion. I take it JMO is the judge. I'm reading to you from the article here in the Lansing State Journal. The judge invited Let Lansing Vote to amend its complaint against the city to prove that the clerk acted arbitrarily or in bad faith when he threw out the 300 signatures. Bob Baldori, who's the attorney for Let Lansing Vote, said the group plans to respond with additional filings to show arbitrary action on the part of the clerk. Let Lansing Vote member Jaron Osmar said the case could set a troubling precedent if it is determined a city clerk has broad discretion to invalidate petition signatures without establishing a valid reason to do so. I would agree wholeheartedly with Jaron Osmar on that particular issue. Obviously, we need to have honesty and fluidity and transparency in our governments, especially in our local governments and in all governments. There's no exception, no wiggle room at all for anything but being upfront, honest, and doing things by the book. That's what we expect from our government officials. And in this particular case, it seems that our government officials, and in particularly the Lansing City Clerk, took it upon themselves to not just invalidate signatures, but to throw out a petition that would have changed the course of direction for the city council. And that's profound, that an individual feels that they have the power to do that. We'll keep you updated on this court case. Right now they are amending, obviously, like the judge allowed them to do so, and it is going to be very interesting to see how this court case plays out. Should the judge agree with the Let Lansing Vote group and validates the signatures, thereby validating the petition, then the Lansing City Council is going to have some additional work to do on their hands, because it will invalidate their ordinance and require them to go back to the drawing table. So this is quite the ordeal in Lansing, and it is certainly affecting patients and caregivers and potential business owners around there. It is a big snafu. It's a big problem, and hopefully they'll get this thing resolved and cleared up. So, but I'll keep you guys informed, let you guys know as best I can. All right. Next city mess created by this MMFLA, if you will, is Detroit. Let me pull up some information on good old Detroit. Let's see here. Bear with me, I apologize for the delay. I'm trying to pull it up a different way here for you. Just as a recap, basically similar items as to what was going on in Lansing is also happening in Detroit, where the council voted in a certain ordinance, then retracted, then put in a different one, and it's just a big mess going back and forth. So let me, I apologize, let me pull this thing up here. I'm trying to find where my article went. I'll try it again. Oh, I know where it was at now. There we go. All right, sorry about that. I had to pull up the right article. All right, so this is a recap from the article. This is from freedomleaf.com. A recent Detroit court decision on the zoning of medical marijuana businesses sheds light on the cannabis equity, how questions of social and racial justice related to the war on drugs will be addressed as the industry grows. All right, so here's a recap. February 16th, Wayne County Circuit Judge Robert Colombo Jr. overturned a voter-approved initiative to relax zoning restrictions for medical marijuana businesses in the Motor City. So there you go. There's the first thing, is that a judge overturned a voter initiative. That's pretty profound. Proposal B, initiative, which passed last November, would have allowed such establishments in all of Detroit's businesses and industrial districts. The judge also partially overturned another initiative passed in November, Proposal A, that would permit dispensaries to operate within 500 feet of another dispensary, as well as near liquor, beer, or wine stores, and to child care centers, arcades, and parks. So if you remember, we actually covered this on the podcast back when it occurred, and the Detroit voters went to the polls and voted on two different proposals. for medical marijuana. Now, these proposals were hotly contested at the time, and it was actually a bit of a surprise that both of them passed. So the voters, the people in Detroit, want this. They passed these after they'd already gone through a snafu with the city of Detroit concerning medical marijuana. They got their own initiatives on the ballot and then passed them, and then a judge went behind them and ixnayed what they had done. So, ironically, the rulings came just hours after Colombo dismissed 2 other cases challenging the initiatives. One was brought on by VK Real Estate Holdings III, LLC, a company seeking a medical marijuana license that feared greater competition, and the other by Detroit residents, Marcus Cummings and Deborah, I'm not going to have Deborah's last name, Omakihindi. I apologize, Deborah. Cummings runs the Anti-Cannabis Metropolitan Detroit Community Action Coalition. So 2 different groups had challenged the initiatives. Colombo threw both of those out, but then turned back around and threw out the medical marijuana one as well. Colombo ruled those plaintiffs had failed to establish legal standing or show special injury that appeared to hand a victory to the Citizens for Sensible Cannabis Reform, the group that had placed the 2 initiatives on the ballot last year. But Colombo then decided that the city of Detroit itself could challenge the initiatives, allowing city attorneys to argue that under 2006 state law, a zoning ordinance can't be enacted by initiative under state law. Colombo ruled in their favor. CSCR countered that Proposal B merely amended the city's zoning ordinance to make it consistent with the Michigan's Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, which was passed to bring the licensing process up to speed after commercial sales of cannabis were shot down by the Supreme Court in 2013. In the period between 2013 court decision and the 2016 law, commercial cannabis sales in Michigan took a place in a kind of legal limbo, often tolerated on a de facto basis, as authorities began to put new regulatory regime in place. So I'm going to skip down on here a little bit. It says, we're seeing a huge element of hypocrisy. Inclusion is being preached but not being followed on. They created an ordinance that did not consider where minorities are. They created an ordinance that's why non-African Americans and non-Hispanics are seeking the majority of licenses. The goal was to create a more free market atmosphere where everyone would have a fair chance and the cream rises to the top. So I know it's a bit confusing to go through all this, but basically you had city council pass something, voters didn't like it, they passed their own initiatives, A and B. Judge doesn't like the initiatives, threw them out and says you don't have the right to do that. I think there's a lot of overlapping government agencies here, speaking for each other, in a sense, negating each other in some cases, and in other issues, bringing it to a moot point. Look at this. This is a mess. So what is Detroit supposed to do now? Rewrite everything? Start over again? I mean, this is definitely a concern. And in the meantime, patients are going to suffer. Caregivers are suffering. There was another article that came out to sort of confirm this from Freep.com that says, right at the headline, Detroit's could miss out on millions from medical marijuana, and it is because of this issue that we just talked about here.
I wonder if there's as much of an issue surrounding establishing a microbrewery. Okay, I mean, there's kind of a comparison there. I mean, there is,
John.
Yeah.
The problem is right now is in their zoning, and for Detroit to decide where they should allow these businesses, where they shouldn't. The issue is when you look at Detroit on a map, and you say, all right, well, your business can't be next to childcare, parks, churches, other dispensaries, so on and so forth. You start Xing out these areas where you would not be able to exist. There are very few areas left on the map to exist. And so this is the dilemma. The areas that are available, according to the ordinance, are not even enough to fill the demand for medical marijuana. They're very slim and none, and it's very exclusive. So there's only a few people who would be able to, in a sense, be compliant with these requirements. And that's what this is talking about. So there's got to be a happy medium between, where should these places exist and, all of the people that say they don't want them in their communities, being able to appease them as well. So it is a give and take, that's for sure. But at the current layout or the current ordinance that everybody is operating by is just not workable. And that's why the people themselves decided that they wanted something different. Let's see here if I get anything from this Freep article. Basically, it's just talking about, the opportunity of the industry, so on and so forth. And then I'll get into here. It says Detroit was in the process of drafting an ordinance last year that would have limited the number of marijuana businesses and enacted strict guidelines on where they could be located and how they could get approval from the city. As a part of the effort, the city shuttered many of the dispensaries, leaving only 70 to continue operating under emergency rules crafted by the state. Blah, 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 blah. The effort was upended when voters, by a 60-40% margin, passed 2 ordinances in November that were geared toward opening up the market to more people and a much wider swath of the city. And that's basically what we just went over. So it says here that they had an approach that said we had room in the city for about 50 medical marijuana dispensaries put in industrial areas and spaced out. They thought that was fair and that we were on a good track. This is from the Detroit Mayor, Mike Dugan. Then you had a state legislation and ballot referendum, and you've got a legal quagmire right now, which is what he's saying. So at any rate, yes, Detroit is a mess. No surprise there, really. But I think it just highlights some of the issues that we're seeing with the state, with the new Medical Marijuana Facility Licensing Act. And it's going to take time for these things to be sorted out. There's no question about it. All right, I'm going to move on to other stories here. A little bit on the licensing thing. I did get some more recent numbers here from there. And then this is more about what the current program is servicing. Right now, just so you guys know, there are 275,000 registered Michigan medical marijuana patients. 275,000. That's according to LARA, according to the state's numbers. There are 45,000 caregivers. All right, so there you go. Those are the numbers of people in the current program. And according to estimates, your average caregiver services about 2-point-whatever patients. Not everybody has 5. I know there's an impression out there that that's the case. That's not the case. The average caregiver in Michigan has 2 patients underneath them. So that leaves about 185,000 patients out there who are either producing for themselves or procuring their medication from other sources, whatever they may be. That's what the current numbers are. And as to date, there's been no approval for any new applications for facilities acts. There's just been more applications pouring in. That's it. So, all right, let me move on here to another story, another issue. We've talked extensively on the program here about our need to have the federal government reschedule medical marijuana on their drug scheduling list. So right now it's scheduled in 1, schedule category 1, which is the same as heroin and other drugs along the likes. Obviously it needs to be rescheduled. The reason I'm bringing it up right now is because one of the main things that is a considering factor in rescheduling our drugs is actually bigger than the U.S. And what I'm referring to is the United Nations. The United Nations has their own policies on drug control. They have their own division in dealing with drugs. It's very, very extensive. And by countries participating in the United Nations, they also agree to these provisions which deal with cannabis specifically. So let me pull up this article for you because I thought it was interesting. And it was a recent, if you will, almost like a doubling down of current policy, which you would think in this day and age the UN would be looking at, making some changes, getting with the times, if you will. And unfortunately, that's not the case. So this is the article. I want to share it with you. This is from, if I can find the source. I'm not sure where it's featured at. It's written by Tom Angel. Let me get into the nuts and bolts of this for you. All right. So basically, according to the UN, governments and jurisdictions in North America have continued to pursue policies with respect to the legalization of the use of cannabis for non-medical purposes in violation of the 1961 Convention as amended, which is the International Narcotics Control Board, otherwise referred to as INCB. And that's a big, big board. They do a lot of stuff. They wrote this in their annual report, which was published just last week. The board notes with concern that in Canada, draft legislation intended to authorize and regulate the non-medical consumption of cannabis was introduced in the House of Commons in April of 2017. This was last year in Canada. The report says, as the board has stated repeatedly, if passed into law, provisions of Bill C-45, which permit non-medical and non-scientific use of cannabis, would be incompatible with the obligations assumed by Canada under the 1961 Convention as amended. So there you go. They're basically calling out Canada right now and saying, look, your law that you're looking at enacting would be in violation of what you've agreed to do, according to the UN. The UN body also criticized state cannabis legalization policies in the U.S. Here's what they had to say. The situation pertaining to cannabis cultivation and trafficking in North America continues to be in flux, owing to the widening scope of personal non-medical use schemes in force in certain constituent states of the United States. It said, the decriminalization of cannabis has apparently led organized criminal groups to focus on manufacturing and trafficking other illegal drugs such as heroin. The board warned Uruguay, which enacted a national marijuana legalization law in 2013, that it is in clear violation of the drug treaties. The limitation of the use of controlled substances to medicinal and scientific purposes is a fundamental principle to which no derogation is permitted under the 1961 Convention as amended, the INCB wrote in their new report. The body also raised concerns about pending proposals in the Netherlands, which would legalize and regulate marijuana, saying that that would be inconsistent with their treaties. Jamaica gets called out as well for 2015 law allowing marijuana for religious use. The board reminds the government of Jamaica and all other parties that under Article 4, Paragraph C of the 1961 Convention, as amended, only the medical and scientific use of cannabis is authorized, and that use for any other purpose, including religious, is not permitted, the report says. While the INCB notes throughout the report that medical cannabis is allowed under the international conventions, countries are expected to enact strict controls to ensure that cannabis is prescribed by competent medical practitioners according to sound medical practice and based on sound scientific evidence. And personal cultivation of medical marijuana by patients is not permitted, the board argues. I'll wrap up here with basically saying the articles require states providing for the use of cannabis for medical purposes to establish a national cannabis agency to control, supervise, and license its cultivation. Such agencies must designate the area in which the cultivation of cannabis is permitted, ensure the licensing of producers, purchase and take physical possession of stocks, and maintain a monopoly on wholesale trading and maintaining stocks, the report reads. States must take measures to prohibit the unauthorized cultivation of cannabis plants, to seize and destroy illicit crops, and to prevent the misuse of and trafficking of cannabis in areas. Similarly, the board wishes to draw the attention of all governments to a previously stated position that personal cultivation of cannabis for medical purposes is inconsistent with the 1961 Convention as amended. So there you go. That's what the UN Convention has to say. That's what the group that controls their drug policies put out just this last week, which I find to be incredibly archaic, and really just I'm flabbergasted that the smartest people in the world, supposedly, who work at the United Nations, you know, this is like the largest governing body in the world, and this is what they put out. And they're basically saying, look, you can have medical if you want it, but it's got to be controlled by your federal government. It cannot be a state's thing. And there's no room for someone producing their own. There's no room for recreational. And yet you have countries like Uruguay, United States, and Canada, and other countries in the world, such as like Spain and Portugal as well, really just kind of sticking their finger up in the air and saying, screw you, UN, we're going to do what we want. This is our country, and we don't care about some treaty that we signed in 1961. And I think it's also profound that this treaty was signed in 1961. That was 10 years before the United States enacted their Controlled Substances Act. So long before the United States said marijuana and all these other drugs are illegal, The UN did in 1961, 10 years before that. So to some degree, yes, the UN does hold power. They do hold influence. And to some degree, they don't. I mean, obviously, there's countries like Canada, Uruguay that are moving forward, have moved forward, in spite of this particular part of the treaty they agreed to back in 1961. And, you know, hello, that's over 50 years ago. I think the UN needs to get with the times and update their policies. This is just ridiculous. But it is something that we need to apply pressure for. And I know it seems incredibly distant. You know, we talk about trying to influence our local leaders, which is hard enough. And then trying to influence something on a world scale is nearly impossible. And I'm not going to argue with you, it is. But it is something that we still need to bring to the attention of our local leaders, of our state leaders, and of our federal leaders as well. Because we as a nation need to put pressure on the United Nations to change their policies. This is just ridiculous. That's why I'm bringing it up. Because we need to have that change. If the UN changed their policy, a lot of other countries in the world would simply follow suit. And some countries out there are waiting for the UN to tell them to do so. But this kind of mentality is just ridiculous. All right, I'll move on here. Let's see what else I got here to share with you guys. This was a good deal. MIRS, which is like a polling agency. They do all kinds of government work and so on. It's a public agency. They do a lot of polling. Recently just polled here in Michigan adults in favor of recreational cannabis use, and the poll results were over 60%. It's the first time we've reached above 60% for recreational use on a poll. The numbers have been ticking up steadily in the last 8 or 10 years that we've been reporting on this program here. I think the first time I reported was somewhere in the high 40s, and now we're over 60% for recreational use. So this is good news. It's definitely a positive thing when we look at the fact that we're going to be voting on this in November. It seems that we're going to have the support there to make this happen. But it doesn't mean that we should be settling and resting on our laurels, if you will. We need to be vigilant, and we need to make sure people are educated and motivated and going to be going out and voting this year and making that change that is necessary. So that was good news. Good poll, good survey came out. It's legit. You can't argue with the numbers. It's good stuff. All right. Another article I want to share with you guys. See if I can pull this up here. Oh, I do want to mention this too, and some of you may be interested. There is if I can find it here, the state is putting on another educational session, a medical marijuana session. This is in regards to the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act. These are the same classes that they did previously in the year, although I'm sure now that it's been a few more months have gone by. Actually previously last year, take that back. But now the time has passed, I bet you they'll have more information to share. The exciting thing about this is you do not need to go to the convention itself. It's going to be at the Kellogg Center in East Lansing if you do want to attend. If you want to attend, you need to go to the state's website and sign up because there's limited amounts of people that can fit in the room, obviously. There's no cost. You just sign up and go. It's really easy. You do it online. It takes you 2 minutes. If you don't want to bother being there, you're going to be able to watch this on the state's website live stream. Okay, so hopefully we'll be able to stream that into the club so you guys can watch it there. You can watch it at home, of course, or on your phone, whatever. If you want to get the information for that. I'm just trying to pull up the dates here so I can share that information with you guys. Let's see here, March 26th. Again, March 26th, Kellogg Center. It is 8 a.m. to noon, and that is in East Lansing if you were unaware. Again, no cost to attend. Just simply sign up if you want to show up. Otherwise, watch it with us online, and we can discuss later on the podcast. All right? So, for those of you that want to check that out, please do. Okay, another thing I want to share with you guys. This is pulling this up here. And I thought that this was redundant, or maybe we've already talked about this, but I think it's good because it's being talked about again. And I guess one of the things you got to realize that the article is written by Paul Armentano, which, you know, Paul has been a big supporter of cannabis for a long time out in California. I think at one point he was the head of NORML, but he wrote this article, so it's, you know, it's going to be good. All right. So, anyways, this is about studies showing that legal cannabis access reduces opioid use. And this is good stuff. So scientific data is growing nearly by the day in support of a notion that legalized cannabis can mitigate opioid use and abuse. For instance, among states where medical cannabis access is permitted, patients routinely lessen their opioid intake, according to data published this week by the Minnesota Department of Health. Among these patients known to be taking opioid painkillers upon their enrollment into the program, 63% were able to reduce or eliminate opioid usage after 6 months. So that's pretty good. And of course, we're talking about enrollment in the state's medical marijuana program. So 63% of the people that did that were able to reduce their opioid usage. Minnesota's findings are hardly unique. It says in the article in 2016, there was data gathered from patients enrolled in Michigan, reported that Michigan's treatment was associated with a 64% decrease in opioid use. So I think that's an excellent number. A review of state-registered patients from various northeastern states yielded similar results, finding 77% of respondents acknowledged having reduced their use of opioids following cannabis therapy. A significant percentage of respondents also reported decreasing their consumption of anti-anxiety medications, 72%, migraine-related medications, 67%, and sleep aids, 65%, and antidepressants, 38%. A 2017 assessment of medical cannabis patients in Illinois revealed that participants in the state's run program frequently reported using marijuana as an alternative to other medications, most commonly opioids, but also anticonvulsants, anti-inflammatories, and over-the-counter analgesics. New Mexico patient data reports compared to non-users, medical cannabis enrollees were more likely either to reduce daily opioid prescription dosages between the beginning and end of the sample period, 83.8% versus 44.8%, or to cease filling opioid prescriptions altogether, 40.5% versus 3.4%. It says here, just 2 published clinical trials from Israel where medical cannabis is used legally. In the first study, which assessed cannabis use among the elderly, investigators reported that over 18% of the study's participants stopped using opioid analgesics or reduced their dose over a 6-month period. They concluded cannabis can decrease the use of other prescription medicines, including opioids. In the second trial, which assessed the safety and efficacy of cannabis in a cohort of over 1,200 cancer patients, scientists reported that nearly half of respondents reported either decreasing or eliminating their use of opioids during the treatment period. So I think that's pretty strong evidence that it obviously does make an impact on these patients and being able to reduce other medications. That's excellent information. It says here, authors determined both active cannabis and low dose of oxycodone were subtherapeutic, failing to elicit analgesic on their own. However, when administered together, pain responses were significantly reduced, pointing to the opioid sparing effects of cannabis. They concluded, smoked cannabis combined with an ineffective analgesic dose of oxycodone produced analgesia comparable to an effective opioid analgesic dose without significantly increasing cannabis abuse liability. That's a bit of a complicated statement there, but what they're basically saying is that the synergy between opioids and cannabis actually does work. That's scientific, and it is making the opioid medication more effective. So essentially, the patient can take less of it or a different type and receive the benefits that they're used to receiving from a higher dose. That's excellent because that's a healthier choice for those patients. It says the data is consistent and clear. Many patients, cannabis offers a viable alternative to opioids, and it is time for the administration to stop placing political ideology above the health and safety of the American public. So well-written article here by Mr. Paul Armentano. He's the Deputy Director of NORML, like I said, co-author of the book Marijuana is Safer, and also author of the book Citizen's Guide to State-by-State Marijuana Laws. So thank you, Mr. Paul Armentano. Excellent article, very, very well laid out. And I think that we could second that in the club without question. Many of us patients have seen that effect personally. Many of us caregivers have seen that effect firsthand through our patients and their reduction in opioid use and other medications as well. I like that they mentioned anti-anxiety medications or antidepressant medications, as we've found that cannabis can be a substitute or a integral part of their treatment along with their prescription medications. And it's obviously a healthier alternative to some of the other ones that are being provided out there. So good stuff. I want to share that with you guys because I think that is really the way of treatment for a lot of us out there dealing with long-term chronic pain, is to substitute the opioids for cannabis, and to not be afraid of the synergy either. I know a lot of patients out there do use both. You need to be careful when doing so because it does kind of double down the effects of the opiate and also of the cannabis in a sense. That's why oftentimes if you're going to an emergency room, something along those lines, and they want to know have you consumed cannabis in the last 24 to 48 hours, you need to be absolutely honest with them because it can have a synergistic effect if they were to put you under some sort of analgesic or some sort of anesthetic. Or what is it when they knock you out, John? What's the stuff? The words eluding me right now.
What'd you say?
When they give you this stuff that knocks you out.
Sedatives?
No, it starts with an A.
Anesthesia. Anesthesia.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you, John. Brain fart, couldn't think of it. That can be synergistic and it can be very dangerous. So you need to be careful about that, all right? So if you take a trip to the emergency room and they ask you if you've used cannabis, be honest, all right? You don't want to kill yourself or something like that. But point aside, cannabis and opiates do work together, and they are very effective. And we know from most of our personal experiences, from what we've been seeing in the news, long-term opiate use is very damaging to someone's health. I mean, period. It destroys the kidneys, the liver, all other kinds of things can happen. And in general, the quality of life really is a big factor for a lot of folks because the opiates just sort of drain the person and leave them with zero motivation to even get off the chair. And for a lot of folks, that's a big deal. So if we can use cannabis in place or a substitute and hopefully have a better quality of life, I think that's a big factor as well, in addition to sparing your organs the damage. So, all right, that's what I had to share with you guys this week. I hope you guys are having fun at the club. It's a beautiful thing. I know we got lots of fun stuff going on down there. And definitely want to remind you again about the 420 party. Make sure you're there for that. Make sure you come in, $20 tickets, get them in advance. If you're going to be one of the people entering in the contest, make sure you get your stuff in by April 13th, okay? Thanks for joining me on the podcast this week. I definitely appreciate being here on All Points TV. Make sure you check out all their other podcasts for important information here. John, thanks for coming in on the studio today and making it happen. You guys have a great week at the club. Be careful out there, and hopefully next week when I talk to you, it'll be warm and sunny. All right? You guys have a great St. Patrick's Day, and I'd say kiss me. I'm Irish, but I'm not. All right? Whatever. Enjoy your greens. Thanks. See ya.